You are now listening to WUMM 91.1 FM Machias, and today is Thursday, October 10th, 2019. Welcome to the UMM Engaged Clipper Chat Room, UMM's career talk show featuring alumni, employers, and career professionals from around the region, state of Maine, and country. My name is Joellen Scribner, and I am the manager for the Career and Alumni Relations Center here at the University of Maine at Machias, and I will be your host for this program. If you would like to ask our guest a question during our show today, please feel free to chat with me at jscribner@maine.edu or call the chat room phone line at 255-1240. Today's professional guest is Jason Aylmer, who is phoning in from the University of Maine Graduate School Admissions Office. Jason is currently working as a graduate student recruiter. Thank you for taking the time to join us today, Jason.
Thanks for having me.
So my first question would be, tell us a little bit about yourself and your current position.
Certainly. So here at the grad school, as you mentioned, I'm one of the graduate student recruiters, and I've been here for about 4 months. I'm also taking classes myself as a non-degree student and working toward, hopefully, an English degree for my MA. So that's very exciting. So I get to have kind of the student perspective as well as the recruiter perspective.
Well, great. So you are in a program, you said, now as a non-degree student?
Correct, yeah.
Yes, how does that work?
Certainly, yeah. So we have, it's actually a great benefit as well for employees, too. But it's a fantastic option for anybody that wants to take a couple classes at the graduate level. You can get permission from the instructor and, get to take a class, get credit for it, and really kind of experience, that sort of initial step in jumping into what you want to explore, in my case, English. And it's really kind of a nice, soft starting point. Someone like myself graduated actually from the University of Maine, Orono here, almost 20 years ago, and going back to school. It's been a really great plan.
Well, great. So how long have you been working with the Graduate Admissions Office?
It's been about 4 months. My recruiting focus works with students throughout the UMS system, as well as doing some international recruiting too.
Okay, great. So what steps did you take to find your position?
So I've known for a while that I wanted to come back to Humane in some sort of capacity, and I really wanted to find the right fit. I've been keeping an eye on positions that were open specifically here at Humane and something within sort of the recruiting realm that I had been doing previously. And it just kind of all came together, perfect fit. And, I really love being on campus, being part of sort of that, academic community, and keeping an eye out for this, for must have been almost 2 years to find, like I said, that right fit to come back to campus.
Well, great. So, what would you say a typical day is for you, if there is such a thing?
That is an excellent question. So, typical day, it's a lot of outreach and follow up with prospective students. We have some different emailing campaigns and calling campaigns, and we have a lot of folks in the office who assist with those things. But for me, it's reaching out. We really want to kind of have that personal touch and get to know our prospective students and really help them, from day one, guide them along the process and find the right fit here for them on campus. So a lot of communication, a lot of planning. We work closely with marketing folks and those types of departments. And then there's also, going out on the road. I went to 2 grad fairs this week at other schools in Maine, get to meet, folks face-to-face, talk to them, explain what Humane is all about, and all those sorts of things. So it's a little bit of a mix, but initially sort of a typical day is a lot of outreach, which I love, and connecting with prospective students.
So great. So do you think that there is a personal quality or ability that is important to be successful in your job?
I'm not a huge fan of the term, say, people person, for example, but I think getting to know, I I love the exploration, finding out, what do you love doing and how do you incorporate or see that in your future job, or are you looking to change careers, and finding a fit with a program here on campus. So I think, being inquisitive and being outgoing and enjoying that discovery process is hugely important.
So, of course, myself being in the Career Center here at UMM and career services being so important to our students getting ready to go out into the job search and workplace, what advice would you give to our listeners throughout the system about the importance of getting involved in career readiness training and engagement on their campuses? And do you think that those skills will be important as they prepare for graduate education as well?
Absolutely, that is hugely important, and something that I'm actually passionate about. In my previous work life, I was working for a nonprofit in the Bangor Career Center, and got to be involved in a lot of those skill building opportunities. Everything from resume prep, we did speed interviewing. All of those components are usually important, and pieces of them we have here on campus, and we actually build into some of the stuff we do here at the grad school. So, for example, we have something called Mug Club, where you get a free mug, and you get little stickers as you come to each event, and it's on the first Thursday of every month, and they do all kinds of different professional series. So this most recent one met and did a piece on public speaking. So these are all sort of free events that we have here. We have something called Open Lab Days for students, especially in the STEM programs, that need to come and get experience. Again, all free, all part of your education. These components are just so helpful when you're going not only to, like you said, getting into some sort of graduate program, but going on to your job or career, and stuff I can't stress enough to take advantage of.
Great. So now that we've taken a little peek at your professional career, let's talk about the graduate school admissions process itself. So, Jason, tell our listeners today a little about the number of graduate programs that are offered at the University of Maine.
Sure. So we have what we call the Grad Advantage here, and it's kind of four components: affordable education, distinctive programs, beautiful location, and world-renowned faculty and facilities. And because of this, we have over 100 different graduate programs that folks can be involved in, from certificates to master's degree, PhDs, professional programs. There really is something for everybody here. And if there isn't something that matches your exact fit, we also have interdisciplinary programs, both an interdisciplinary master's and an interdisciplinary or PhD program, where you can help create and pull different elements from departments and kind of work on, with the help of a faculty member and your steering committee, kind of creating a curriculum that makes sense for you.
Great. So, I was thinking about, to kind of break it down a little bit more, the doctoral programs versus the master's programs versus the certificate programs, and it might be a lot to really talk about each one, but do you have a sense of how many you offer of each type of, in each type of area? Like doctoral programs, how many do you have?
Yeah, so the breakdown, it's actually kind of interesting, because sometimes for the master's degrees, some of them are dual degrees, so they kind of count for two different programs and are interdisciplinary. And then we have our certificate programs as well, like I mentioned, and the professional programs that we are growing. I believe there are 8 or 9 of those right now, and then most of the rest are the PhD and master's degree programs. We have, I think it's 16 certificate programs. And one thing to note between those two is that there's a number of different options on how sort of education reaches you. We obviously have a number of programs here on campus. We have some online through the Division of Lifelong Learning, and then we have some programs that are blended, where you do some component online and then some component maybe you meet on campus once a month or at the Hutchinson Center in Belfast. So in addition to the different types of programs, there's also sort of different modalities for learning as well.
Yeah, there's really you can reach a lot more people and get more people involved the more that we advance through the technological age of things, I think, with the online options and also the blended options. So is there any current programs right now? I know we have talked about it a little bit, and I'm kind of going off script here a little bit, but that we've talked about with some collaborations between the regional campus here at UMM with Humane to offer a fifth year as an opportunity to get the master's. Are they still working on anything like that? Do you know?
Yes. So we have our double up programs, and essentially for those, it allows undergrad students a really great opportunity to start taking grad classes at the end of their undergrad career. So depending on the program, it would be either your junior or senior year, and you have plenty of time starting freshman, sophomore year, but learning and understanding and kind of getting into a program like that really sets you up nicely for potentially getting your master's degree in 5 years. So an example of that, you can go on our website, which we'll get to in a little bit, but something like the MBA program where you can, let's say you are English as an undergrad, and then you take some classes, and then at the end, that final and fifth year, again, depending on how many classes you end up taking, your junior or senior year would kind of depend on if you can get that done in that final fifth year or not. But like I said, it's a really great option. If it's something that you can kind of put together and plan far enough in advance to really feel great about, hey, I've accomplished, I'm done. I have a master's degree in 5 years is quite something. So that's another program, like you said, that we're working on expanding some offerings so that it can be not only here on campus but between campuses as well.
Which I'm really a great supporter of that. And I also know financially, as we get into the financial aid question of things, that looking at a fifth year for financial reasons would be a very positive thing for our students to think about as well. So because what with financial aid is offered to support students that are coming in as graduate candidates?
Yeah, so we have a number of different options. For example, we have graduate assistantships, and there's over 600 of those that are awarded every year, and it's just an option that you check off when you apply. Unlike sort of traditional financial aid like FAFSA, where you fill out a whole form and it's a whole thing, these types of sort of assistantships are part of the application process. For teaching assistantships or research assistantships, those usually go through the department itself. The graduate assistantship often is more campus-wide. So, for example, we have in our grad school office here at Stoddard Hall, we have 7 GAs, graduate assistants, that are working here. And when you're a graduate assistant, you usually do up to 20 hours of work in whatever office setting you may be in. So here they're working on student outreach and marketing and those sorts of things, assisting with all of those things. Your tuition is paid for, and then those 20 hours, you're earning a stipend as well to help pay for your living expenses, books, and those sorts of things. So
how is the teaching assistant positions awarded? I mean, you've got 600. You mentioned 600 grad assistants. So what is the criteria like for that? Is it more depending on who's applying first? What are people looking at?
Yeah, definitely order of application is hugely important for all of them, the graduate assistantships, teaching assistantships, and research assistantships. You want to, a lot of the departments have on their website, they'll note sort of they might have a rolling deadline, but they'll say by January 15th or February so-and-so, you really want to have your application in for funding consideration. And that's, hugely important for sort of being at the front of the line, if you will. And part of that, especially the teaching assistantship and research assistantship, we will, when we're working with students right out of the gate or prospective students, we want to often get them connected with the graduate coordinator for the department they're interested in, and then they can kind of build that relationship. Oftentimes, like doing research assistantship, for example, is fairly similar. It's almost kind of like a job application, if you will. You're going to be in working with someone's lab. If it's a master's degree, 2 or 3 years, PhD, upwards of 6 or 8 years, and you're going to be working on somebody's grant, and there's really that sort of professional aspect to it as well. So making those sort of personal connections, get your name out there, have the faculty members aware of who you are, really helps.
Great. So in your research-based graduate programs, do faculty and students publish together?
They do, yes. So if students go to the Fogler Library, there's a section called Digital Commons, and those publications are all available to view.
Great. So how do most degree candidates and faculty members in your prospective programs measure career success?
This is a really great question. And sort of from my anecdotal evidence talking to folks, I think one thing that really stands out when we're hearing and talking about student success stories is that the bottom line is that students get to do what they love. When work doesn't feel like work type of thing, they're out there in the field. University of Maine it's been since the beginning, a land-grant university, strong research component. A lot of these folks are out in the field doing amazing work and often stay right here in Maine to do that work. So I think when you are able to kind of get up, and go out and be like, wow, I'm contributing, I'm doing whatever, I'm writing papers, I'm studying fish, whatever it is, you get to do what you love, and you don't feel like you're going to work every day.
So in some of the programs, I think that some places have like admissions committees that are within the programs, and is that typically what happens at UMaine, or once the applications are submitted in that it goes before a committee?
Yes, that is a good question, because it does differ a lot from school to school. So the way it's set up here is that the application gets sent to us for an initial review, just to make sure that all of the test scores and recommendations are all attached, and then we electronically deliver it to the department, and the departments have their committee reviews. They do a very holistic review. They want to look at all aspects of the application and the student's experience and all that stuff. And then that application recommendation is made from the department and sent here to the grad school, and then it gets signed off, and we sent out acceptance letters and all those sorts of things. But the committee review is really important, and departments sometimes do it a little bit differently, whether it's all the faculty members or just a collection of them. But really trying to take that holistic approach. They want to have a consensus review from everybody to make sure that we're really selecting somebody and that it is the best fit for them. It might be somebody too that is really passionate about one subject, but maybe their experience is in a different subject, and it might make more sense for them to continue the research in that subject. So there can be some feedback occasionally involved, but really the idea is we want to find both the best fit for the student and for the department.
So just, going back a little bit about what you said with the testing process and that, we'll talk about the application process a little bit more in a minute, but how do they weigh the GRE or the MAT or whatever the test is that is required? How does that weigh in the application process?
That it is a good sort of barometer, I guess you would say, for graduate success, in the sense that it is weighed as part of the overall review, and some departments do not require the GRE, but those that do, the departments and this is sort of another example of a good reason why to get connected with the graduate coordinator for that department, is that they can go into detail on what sort of they're specifically looking for, whether it's a higher analytical score or whatever it is, just to kind of give you a heads up, to say, hey, this is kind of what we look for. Also, on the flip side too, if say you aren't a particularly strong test taker, or that your GRE scores you didn't feel maybe you did as well as you could have, sometimes there's the option to retake. Or because it is a holistic review, if you have a fantastic essay and awesome recommendations, those could sort of necessarily lift up your application, so to speak, as well. So I know sometimes people get kind of stressed out about that, and it's not necessarily the end of the world. It is obviously important to do well on them, but definitely connecting with the department to kind of get a better idea on what their specific expectations are around that is something that we often connect students with.
Yeah, so here on campus, we do offer the Miller Analogies testing that they could take here, but do you offer like GRE testing there? Do they have to go to the testing center in Bangor, or how does that work?
Yeah, I believe it does go through the testing center in Bangor.
Okay, so you don't do that. Okay. All right. So what is the competition like in some of your programs? I mean, excuse me, what are the numbers like? I'm sure it differs in between the programs on how many are accepted, but, is there a typical pool of candidates that they want, like 10, 15, or how many get accepted each year?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of, discussion around this, and one thing that we always like to prepare our students for is that, whether it is we have some departments that are small in that they maybe take 8 to 10 students every year and have a huge application pool. Some of the bigger departments, maybe the inverse might be true. But, I think sometimes students do focus on that a little bit, and it can be overwhelming sometimes. You'll see statistics online about schools' acceptance rates or what have you. And because we have over 100 different programs, and it does kind of vary quite a bit from program to program, and even from year to year, based on research grants and the funding that's available for that specific department at that specific date and time, we really try to get students to kind of focus on their strengths. Not even aside from what kind of makes you stand out, just thinking about, again, almost from that sort of job, like if you're going to do get a job, what makes you stand out, especially in one of the STEM things, you'll be working in a lab. Why would that person necessarily want you to be in their lab for 20 to 40 hours a week? What are you bringing, and what kind of makes you stand out? Because that will definitely put you over the edge.
And like we were gonna, like the next question I was gonna ask was about how would they stand out and the criteria that would be used, which is really about, important skills that you're building along the way that you should be doing in your undergraduate education, so that you're building that resume that would become part of what the application process.
Yes, yeah, it is really about being a well-rounded student. So, for example, if you wanted to become a biologist and you had fantastic grades and all this stuff, but you didn't have any lab experience, that's what you'd really want to focus on. So we have those open lab days that I had mentioned earlier, and we'd want, you'd really want to get in there and make sure that you had that experience.
Now, what I tell students usually is, by your junior year, at least by the second semester of your junior year, you really want to be thinking very seriously, at the minimum of that time, of if you want to go on to a graduate education. So, knowing that, if people are prepared at that time, if they were really connecting with the graduate school, then they would have a better understanding if their undergraduate degree was actually giving the most, meeting the most criteria that the school might be looking for up there. So, how would you know if a student's undergraduate degree has prepared them well enough to apply to graduate school?
And I think that can be a little tricky, and that's where that sort of well-rounded application piece comes in, whether it's volunteering or whether you're taking time to do the open lab days, or whether you're, have taken some sort of other classes, something that's going to make you stand out. I think the essay sometimes may get a little overlooked. It's actually a little bit different from what students might have done for their undergrad. The essay can be a really great way to stand out as well, and say, these are all the elements that kind of make up who I am, and this is how it all comes together. So that ability to self-promote is really important.
Okay. So, what is the application process really like? I mean, what are the components? I mean, what should the student expect from that process? And what is the wait once they submit? What are the time frame once they submit their application?
Certainly. So the online application is very streamlined. It's about 30 minutes or less to fill out the application itself, and then the components that you upload and add to it obviously take a little more time. Most of the programs require some kind of personal essay. Most of them have 3 letters of recommendation. Quite a few of them do have the GRE requirement. And then as far as the response time, it is department dependent. Quite a few of them, in order to get, in order for the student to be considered for that initial funding, you want to do most of them have, the initial deadline time is January, February, and then announcements are often made shortly thereafter in March and April, so it's quite often not a very long wait time. Sometimes folks, that apply later on at the end of the spring into summer sometimes have a little bit longer wait while they're sorting out to see who may have accepted or declined from their previous round. So that sometimes can be a little bit of a longer wait. But the initial idea is to get everybody some sort of response by the beginning of spring so they can start making some plans.
So, and with that, and I had mentioned in the last question about, usually by the second semester of their junior year, I'm telling people if they're really interested, they need to start thinking then, because there are specific deadlines and probably, different deadlines for different programs. And so it could be you come in your senior year and you've got an October 15th deadline. I don't know if there's actually one there at Humane at that particular time, but there could be a quick deadline to those type of things. So when I'm saying the second semester of the junior year, do you think that's the wisest choice, or should they be looking sooner? Just because of the competition, some programs are so popular that, they may have to wait a year or so after they've graduated.
Yeah, I think that is a good time frame, and as we look into potentially expanding, programs like the Double Up, where you could, take grad classes earlier, that may be moved back. Mm-hmm. But I think that's an excellent time. You can spend the summer working on your essay, getting your recommendations in line, and be kind of ready to go at the beginning of your senior year.
So, yeah, and I tell people that, the more eyes, the better. Bring it to the Career Center, take it to a professor, let different people look at the pieces too. Also, the recommendations that they need to make sure they're reaching out to the people, and that people are actually, like the professor, if they're going to be a recommendation for them, are actually willing to do those things for them.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So what applied experience are included in some of the programs? I know you've mentioned labs and things like that, but is there like an internship type program, or are there practical pieces to a lot of the programs?
There are, and that I think is another piece that is part of the Grad Advantage that we had mentioned that really sets things apart when under the sort of the distinctive programs heading, is that most of them have that real world experience built in. So, for example, in communication sciences and disorders, for individuals that are looking to go on to do speech pathology or something of that nature, there's probably, I don't even know what the specific number is for how many internships that they have, but there's all kinds of different options for students. They all get that experience during their second year, similar to social work or something like that, where, obviously, as we talked about, the students that have the lab and the research experience here on campus, they also have partnerships for like the biomedical research group. Some of those programs do like a rotating lab, so we have partnerships with Jackson Lab, MDI, the biological laboratories there, so they can, as well as off-campus, get some lab experience there too.
Great. So we talked a little bit about the graduate admissions test, so to speak, but what about undergraduate grades, transcripts, the recommendations? We talked a little bit about the essays, but how is it weighted? at each criteria level, or is it just all in one big package and the overall view?
Yeah, the shift really is to that holistic review and trying to take a step back, sort of the 10,000-foot view of the student, and say, okay, we have all these components. What does that equal? And instead of necessarily saying, okay, well, this is 10%, this is 20%, this is 30%, type of thing, really getting a full picture of the student and taking into account, as I mentioned earlier, if somebody maybe necessarily isn't the greatest test taker, but have amazing recommendations and all this real world experience, we want that student to jump in and join our program. So there's a number of different factors, and I think also in talking to the grad coordinator, one of the things that they start to work on and facilitate, especially for some of the STEM programs, is getting you matched up with your faculty advisor. And if you're going to be coming in, doing your master's degree and working on a grant, you really get to know that person, and then as your application goes through, you've connected with them, and they can kind of be an advocate for you during that process and saying, hey, I spent a lot of time tracking this individual. I think they'd be a really great fit for this project. So that's another sort of component as well to the application process.
Okay. So does the department up there prefer applicants immediately out of undergraduate programs, or do they prefer the applicants to come in with work experience? I mean, sometimes I tell students that if you have a financial need and you can't meet it, it might be better for you to, get employed first, see what your employer will be willing to support and those type of things. So, but as far as experiences go and being able to participate and give that input in those programs, do you think they prefer the undergraduate right out of college, or do they prefer more experience?
I think it is really, honestly, a mix from what I've seen, and it does kind of depend on the program and really the student, because sometimes if they have taken that extra time to, get some volunteer experience in and had these different opportunities while they're doing their undergrad and want to jump right into a master's, or there's even options to go right into into a full PhD program right out of your bachelor's degree. So it does depend on the individual, and again, going back to connecting with that grad coordinator and potentially your future faculty advisor, they can really give you that good advice and say, you know what, maybe instead of for fall 2020, let's look at spring 2020, and then for the next 6 months, you can do X, Y, and Z as your experience to kind of bolster, what we would need for you to come in and do whatever. So there's definitely some assistance in kind of figuring that out, depending on what you want to go into.
Okay, so how long does it take once a student enters into a program to actually graduate? Now, I imagine some programs might require full-time while others may allow part-time, but what would you say was the average or the amount of years that it might take?
Sure, yeah. So for the master's degree, it's between 2 to 3 years. Some master's degrees have an option where you can do thesis or non-thesis, depending if you want to continue on in academia and do a PhD or something like that. And then on the PhD level, it's usually 4 to 6 years. You technically have up to 8 to complete that.
So, and that just goes into the dissertation or the thesis. So, typically up to 8 years for that type of program?
Correct. And with the PhD, your dissertation, to complete the dissertation is about 2 to 3 years.
2 to 3, okay.
Mm-hmm.
I just had somebody actually call in with a question for you.
Sure.
So are there any special considerations that our older non-traditional students should be thinking about when considering graduate school, especially for those who were not traditional age students when they began their undergraduate degree programs?
I would say, so sort of, again, speaking just from my own experience in going back to school, that non-degree option was something that I really felt strongly about, that I didn't have to commit to necessarily jumping into a program out of the gate. I could take a class and confirm that this is indeed what I wanted to do. On the flip side, if you do know exactly what you want to do, then immediately what we want to do is connect with you and get you some sort of, we could schedule a visit here or over the phone and have you sort of speak with the department and figure out what the best track is. Sometimes they have some different options, especially if somebody has, say, 20 years of work experience in the field. There might be some different options around what that looks like, whether it's they don't have to do the GRE or different portfolio experience. Does that count for any type of college credit? Perhaps they started a master's degree before and maybe have some credits that they can transfer into the department. So there's a number of different elements that we can explore when looking at that.
So along with that non-degree option, Jason, now when students are applying into a graduate degree program, they put their application in, the whole process is considered. But on the non-degree track, so to speak, how does that all play? Do they still have to do the application process into the graduate school, or can they, like at UMM, we'll say for an undergraduate English class, you can just enroll if there's enough space, but how does that work at that level?
So yes, that is an excellent point. So when you go on, it is technically an application, but the only sort of decision that's made is that a lot of the classes will ask that you reach out to the professor and email them and just say, hey, this is me, this is why I would like to be in your class, and then they will often say yes, or if they're full or whatever, say maybe you want to take this class instead, and you would just include that email confirming your acceptance into their program or into their class, and go from there. So when you log in and you take a look at our application, there's one of the options is non-degree, and it just asks kind of what program you're interested in, some questions about yourself, and then you're kind of off and running from there.
And so with the non-degree option too, and as far as financial aid goes, it's not through federal financial aid. So if you needed money to help you with the non-degree option, it would be the same as with the degree option.
So the financial aid options are a little different for non-degree. We can take a look. Again, we'd want to see if the department had any specific funding or grants or something for those students, as well as employers too. Sometimes another great way is if you're looking to take the next step in your career, sometimes employers will be willing to pay some, if not all, of the cost for that too.
Okay, great. So how are mentoring and advising relationships established? Are advisors assigned?
So oftentimes in departments, especially if you're going to be doing some sort of research assistantship, what we will do sort of out of the gate, so let's say you came to me and said, I'm interested in X, Y, and Z, studying whatever, we would go to that department's web page and we kind of take a look at, a lot of them have sort of these research focus areas, and they'll tell you what the areas that they're studying and then what faculty members are involved in that research. And from there, we would get you connected with that faculty member and say, I have so-and-so, let's say from Humane Machias, they're a senior, they're really interested in whatever, and, they are passionate about becoming a biologist, let's say. What might that look like in your department? And conversely, if there is something, a research field that they are interested in that we don't have, and definitely we would get connected with the graduate coordinator to see maybe there's an upcoming grant that hasn't been posted yet and somebody's doing some research and we could look to the future or something like that. But we here at the graduate school and in my role sort of initiate that advisor relationship and try to make some connections, especially if students can come for a visit. We'd love to set up customized visits for students so they can do a tour, they can meet with the department potentially, and begin that relationship.
So is there any room for, if not everybody always jives, and I'm not saying they don't, but is there any room to change advisors if there is a need for that?
There is a process for that, and it could be too as well. If somebody decides to change the focus of their master's degree, because there is for certain departments, your master's degree will be in whatever, but within that there's a concentration or a focus. It's not super common, but there is a process for that. So it's not something that is completely locked in place. There's also mediation efforts that go on if there's a particular issue or something. We really want to try to be proactive about that, and kind of get to the bottom of whatever that is.
Okay. So now I know as large as the Humane campus is there any designated or specific housings for graduate students?
There is. So here on campus, our grad school office is on the first/basement floor of Stoddard Hall, and then the floors above us here are all residential, mostly for grad students. Upper-level underclassmen can apply, but it is considered a quiet dorm. There's a lot of single dorm rooms, so it's a very study-friendly environment. We also have University Park, which is right down the road. I think it is technically part of campus, but it's a number of housing and duplex options for families, so folks who are coming and studying that have families, there's some options for them as well, and we can do tours of that too if they want to check out those facilities, but they're super great. I think they're 2- and 3-bedroom, I want to say, a couple 3-bedroom maybe, and they have laundry facilities and all that sort of good stuff for folks as well.
So then they have the family and the individual rooms. So would they just eat in the Commons or in the Memorial Union or wherever on campus? There wouldn't be like little apartments upstairs. They're just single rooms or double rooms.
So the way that the in Stoddard Hall that it's set up upstairs are usually single rooms. I believe there's a refrigerator in every room, and then there's a common kitchen on every floor and laundry facilities that folks share, and there's an oven and a big refrigerator and all those sorts of things.
Okay. So I think we've kind of touched on the next question I had for you, but is there a limited number of graduate candidates that are accepted each year? But it probably depends on the program. So that might be hard to actually give an amount unless we went through each program.
Yeah, no, it is a good question, and I think because we are, a big part of it is because we are so research-based and it is dependent upon grants, it does sort of follow somewhat along the grant cycle as well. So sometimes, during a 2 or 3 year span, a department might be able to take on 15 new students, and then if they get a bigger grant, maybe 20 for the next 3 years. So that does change, but I do think that that's good as well, and can be encouraging for students because it isn't necessarily a static amount every year. Like, we'll only take 10 here, we'll only take 15 here, and then if you're out, you're out type of thing. So I think that there is sort of a silver lining, if you will, to that. And also, I think it's one thing that we had touched on earlier about the graduate assistantships, and I just wanted to expand upon that. And I think it might be a good place to insert here,
Sure.
So when we're looking at something like a teaching assistantship or research assistantship, that usually is fairly department specific for folks who are looking for some sort of fully funded position. The graduate assistantships are unique in that you could be, so we have our 7 graduate assistants here, and they are from all different programs throughout the campus. So even if your department that you're applying to doesn't have a teaching assistantship or doesn't even have a graduate assistantship options in their department office, there's still options. I mean, we have like the University of Maine, their Center for Aging, for example, has some. Our marketing department and Alumni Hall has some. So there, you could end up doing some sort of really neat, amazing graduate assistantship work that might be somewhat unrelated necessarily to your studies. But if there isn't funding available in that department to take on another student for whatever reason, there are other funding options as well. So that sometimes helps expand the number of candidates that might be accepted for a program.
Okay, I'm kind of looking at the website now.
Hmm.
Can you kind of just, if I were a new candidate, and we didn't kind of talk about this before, but where would you start here?
So when you go to the humane.edu/graduate page, the first place I would actually recommend going is to check out all the programs that we have. I think it's laid out fairly well. You can click on the little programs link at the top there, and then there's a little blurb about, we have over 100 different programs, and then you can click on the link that takes you to the full alphabetized list of all the programs that we have, and there's links that take you to each program's page. When you click on the link, there is an option that they put in the little box, the graduate coordinator for each program. Also, as well, I know you'll have our information available that, we would love to hear from everybody that is interested in coming as well and can help connect to either the grad coordinator or a particular faculty member. But I would say checking out the programs page, it really is interesting when you sort of dive down, especially if you're kind of on the fence, like, I want to work with animals or I want to be out on the ocean or whatever it is. There's some options that cover sort of many different aspects of that, if you will. So, like, if you look at the marine biology page, for example, they have a number of interdisciplinary options that kind of overlap in their dual degree program. So you can get something like oceanography and their aquaculture, or marine biology and aquaculture. So there's some options maybe that a student hadn't thought of, and it's like, I really want to do economics, for example. Well, we have a dual degree with economics and global policy, so you can end up with two master's degrees at the end of the day. So I think doing your research or homework, if you will, and kind of seeing what's out there is kind of a good first step.
Okay. So, I'm looking at the site right now myself. It seems really pretty user-friendly.
Mm-hmm.
It talks about how to apply, the online application link, the official test scores and what you need, certificate of finance, and then it's also talking about, securing funding. So it seems pretty user-friendly to me. And I think that probably with our students, as I say to them, you need to get out and you just need to look at it. You just, it's sometimes people like to be walked through it, but this is pretty user-friendly.
It is, and I'm glad you mentioned the application piece, because that was something I don't think I had touched on yet. But for all University of Maine system students, the graduate application fee is waived.
I was just going to ask you that. Is that still that's waived? Yeah.
Yeah, so you don't have to pay the $65 for that.
Great.
We also do pull transcripts, so if you transferred in for another school, we would potentially need that. But if you had just attended, like Humane Machias, your transcript could be pulled in, so you don't have to, request official copies or do anything like that. We can take care of that on our end.
Now, one of the things, and I don't know if you know this or not, but it says secure the funding, so complete the FAFSA. Is there an option under that FAFSA, or is that just for the loans?
So that is, if for whatever reason your program wasn't fully funded, is a link to apply for graduate student loans.
Okay. And are there any grants or scholarship programs?
There are. So those get filed under. There's when you go to the funding option, there's some that are sort of graduate school specific, and then in the departments they have some individual ones as well. I think we have 4 or 5 listed on sort of the graduate overall level. It doesn't matter what program you're applying to, you can apply to these specific grants if they apply to you. Some of them have specific criteria and what have you, but there's a couple that you can check out as well for grants.
Okay, great. So we touched base just a little bit, but tell us about now you had an open house just lately,
Mm-hmm.
and there have been times in past I have brought some students up to that. Do you have just one open house a year?
We do at the moment, yes. So we have the school itself has some other open house and sort of accepted student day events. There's quite a few more for the undergrad folks. We really want to, and have expanded our tour options as well to be really customized for those visits. So you could come and it's sort of like a one-on-one open house, if you will, because we have a sort of a small, close-knit office. There's plenty of opportunity, if we have a little heads up for you to come and meet the folks here and then meet the folks in your department. Visiting during the school year obviously is hugely helpful because the faculty members will be here. So we would love to hear from you and from your students to set up a time, individually, or if you want to bring a group. And then conversely, obviously, we are coming up to see you here on the 22nd. So we're looking forward to our visit up to Machias.
Yes, I'm very excited about that as well. And we do have some community groups that are actually reaching out too, where we will be scheduling you to go down to some of the businesses in town to sit for a little bit and talk to some people that might be interested. So that sounds pretty exciting too, as well as being on campus. And the Humane Graduate School will be on campus on Tuesday, October 22nd from 12:30 to 2 p.m. in Torrey 104, and it is open to all students, as well as there may be some other times for individual appointments as well. So students can reach out to me if they're interested. So, Jason, do you have any questions for me about how the Humane Career Center works and how we support students that are looking at graduate education, perhaps?
I would say, if we, I think in talking about sort of taking that first step, when you're talking about looking on the page, I think apart from the website, taking sort of the first steps towards applying or even investigating, is, a huge part of what I do, and I think I touched on this at the beginning, is connecting with students. So if you have somebody that has questions, is at all curious, wants to know whatever program is about, has questions about housing, whatever it is, just let me know. I would, be more than happy to talk to whomever, whenever about the graduate school programs. And I think there's no wrong questions. There's a ton of options. And obviously you can understand it can be a little overwhelming because there is so much to process. But because there are so many options, I do strongly feel that, there is something for everybody. So, we would, love whether it's an email, phone call, whatever from your students. Let us know. We're here and we want to connect with them.
And from the Career Center here at UMM, I do support students to help them with the application process into graduate schools. Mm-hmm. And so I'm always open to that if people want to set up an appointment with me, as well as trying to connect them if they're a little timid and shy about getting involved right out of the gate. We can reach out to the places that they're interested in and do a little research on other things on the website and stuff like that. So, do you have any other advice you'd like to share today with our listeners if they're interested in graduate school?
I think you had just mentioned about, the having to reach out piece, and I know sometimes it can be intimidating or whatever. You might be real excited about a certain project or whatever, and you find a faculty member that is interested in that. We are happy to connect you, and I know, the faculty members too are also excited about meeting new students that are passionate about what they're studying or doing a research project on or whatever. They are in this business for a reason. They in addition to the work that they're doing, the folks that I have been working with here on campus and going to meet the individuals. We had a whole bunch of faculty members here recently for our open house. They are fired up about learning. They want to share that. They want to see that next group of students come in and make new discoveries and write amazing papers and all that. I hope to sort of dispel some of that, myth that they're, off doing, whatever, and have layers of secretaries and what have you. They are equally excited about hearing from you. So let us know. We can find the best way to communicate with them, whether, like I said, it's email, phone call, a visit here, and start that relationship because, as I had mentioned earlier, they can also be a huge advocate, for you, and especially on the research side of things.
Yes, and we've actually had faculty come down and pass too with some of the graduate admissions team coming down to campus, so that was kind of fun. So perhaps there might be an opportunity in the future for that too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And as a side note, so for our visit, myself, my fellow recruiter, Fiona will be there. We have our student success manager, and then I believe we're going to have somebody from the online team as well. So we'll have a whole bunch of people that can answer all kinds of different questions, from academics to student life to you name it. So we would, really like to see and hear from everybody.
Great. So we'll be looking forward to it. So I just want to take this opportunity to thank Jason today for joining us on the UMM Engage Clipper chat room here at the University of Maine at Machias. And lastly, I want to thank our listeners today, and I hope that you will join us each week on Thursdays at 4 p.m. throughout the semester, where we will be talking with alumni, employers, or discussing career topics with other professionals within the Humane system and community. For more information, please feel free to contact me at my email address at jscribner@maine.edu. This is Joellen Scribner, and you are listening to WUMM 91.1 FM Machias. Have a great day.